Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Busmaker, and today it's my pleasure to welcome Jan Raes to the program. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Frits. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Jan, allow me to introduce you. You are a Belgium native living in the Netherlands, and your international background also manifests itself in your education. Leuven, Belgium, Copenhagen, Denmark, the Netherlands, California, Harvard. Quite a strong background. Well, first 10 years of your professional life, you used to work for various US-based IT firms, then switched to a major Dutch bank where you worked for 20 years. You ended up as the climate and circular economy expert. And before that, which I find actually quite interesting, change manager, compliance manager, information manager. And you recently moved to UNEP, which is the United Nations Environment Program, as the climate and circular economy expert. Again, welcome to the program, Jan. Am I right to think that somehow finance and climate circular economy, is that a good mix or isn't a mix?
Well, you're asking the right person. Obviously, I'm very convinced it's a mix made in heaven. It actually matters where the money goes. I've often used the example, it's kind of an educational pitch I've used before. Think about a fishing boat. You could look at a fishing boat as a crew with a mission to catch as much fish and make as much money as possible. And the cost side is actually the fuel price. That's a very financial way of looking at a fishing boat, right? But once you kind of get into the realm of sustainable finance, you start looking at that fishing boat completely different because it's still the fishing boat that pays money for the fuel and it still has a mission to catch fish. But it might take into consideration extra elements about the social aspects of life on board, of the people working on the ship, thinking about the marine environment and actually whether the fish stock is sustainable, while actually there's no overfishing. You might look at the CO2 emissions related to the fuel. I mean, and that kind of lens I've been specializing in. So for me, it's kind of an extra alphabet, or I would even say an extra language that I'm very comfortable with. And I couldn't think of finance as kind of this isolated thing, a pile of money. I always think of it as a pile of money that moves something in the world. So then it has immediate effect on social circumstance, environmental circumstance, and obviously also the financial well-being of people. That's a very important factor. So you're asking somebody who's very convinced that finance and these ecological and social measures go together.
Yeah, and I would say passionate about that. No, the reason I'm asking that also because I was looking at one of the endorsements on your LinkedIn profile, and where somebody in Vietnam very much praised you on giving a talk on the financing the circular transition.
Yeah.
So the cynic question could be, circular transition is just another way to generate revenue, or from a finance community, is it more profound? What's your experience? Is it in general, okay, this is a great way to finance something so to generate revenue, or you also see that the climate industry takes these ESG factors more seriously?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a way to make money. But if you're very invested in the linear economy, as they say, which is take, make, waste. You take resources, you make stuff out of them, and then they end up as waste in a kind of, let's say, half of it single use or nearly half of it single use, and the other half has some multiple cycles of use. So that's kind of the linear economy in a nutshell. If you're going to look at the circular economy, you're much more concerned about, can we keep these resources that we actually end up taking, but can we keep them in the economic cycle for as many useful cycles as possible. So keeping them alive in the economic system at the highest value. Okay. There is business to be done. I mean, think about not selling bicycles just for people to own them and then like buy a new one after 3 years, but just maybe people could rent them, and that's one model. There's many models that are profitable by now in the circular economy. This is only one I'm mentioning, sharing. But there's definitely money to be made.
Okay.
What I think your second question is a bit more critical, and I'm completely with you that obviously if it's only very marginal in your revenue base, then it could be considered as green behavior for the benefit of making you shine, what they also call greenwashing. So yeah, that's unavoidable. It's part of the way human systems work, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It very much reminds me of a talk I had with Professor Alex Edmans a couple of years ago on the show, who is a professor at the London Finance School. He wrote a book called Grow the Pie, and basically said that any organization out there basically is should be looking at sustainability and circular, because if you just take a long-term approach, then purpose and profit can only be aligned to become a sustainable company.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because that's kind of ironic. It's lying here next to me. It's a book called Non-Zero: The Logic of Human Destiny. And
Okay.
I had read that one. The author is Robert White, and interestingly, I started rereading it a couple of days ago. But it's also one of those books that I read, if I remember well, I think more than 20 years ago, um, something like that. And it did change the way I, I think, because non-zero is really growing the pie.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So you have a lot of zero-sum games, and I think money, for money's sake, is really a zero-sum game. I can give you some, but then it's yours, and I've lost because I've given you some. So if you approach it that way, but if I improve your well-being by having a transaction with you, giving you a job, or you give me a job, or there's kind of some sort of mutual benefit, then the pie does really grow. And I think that book that you're quoting, I love the title,
yeah.
because growing the pie is really all like the most inspiring image. I've talked about the fishing boat, but like it's growing the pie, so including the fish in your business model. I mean, how's their long-term health?
Yeah.
Because that's where you make your money with, and including the marine environment, that it remains healthy, including the people that work on the boat, considering their lives and their quality of life. That's actually growing the pie. It's very linked to sustainable finance. So thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Jan, I'll share with that you in the audience later. Now, I'm talking to you as the climate and circular economy financial expert at UNEP, and that's something we'll briefly discuss later in the show. But uh, you might already have alluded how you got there, because you mentioned a book you read a couple of years ago. But how did you yourself get into this world of climate and circular economy?
Yeah, I saw this short. I mean, I've been working for the financial sector for quite a long time, as you said. Um, but even when I was in data or IT, you also mentioned that part of my career, I was building financial data, mostly building financial data warehouses. And that meant sometimes, I mean, I think my first job in my career was addressing a huge pile of paper tangible invoices and making sure that they were fed into a system, a data warehouse. At that point, I didn't realize that that is really such a truly, that's part and parcel of that financial reality that every company in the world has to deal with. They have to make money, and they have to register where they make their money from. And then, there's some accountability, but it's accountability to the point of accounting. You just have to have the numbers right. And then I grew up in this world, and I've actually started my career in the bank, always saying this is a very social enterprise, because, how can you not be a social enterprise if you have more than 5 million customers, people who have their paycheck sent to their accounts that actually is part of your service to the world. So I've always worked in the assumption that I was working for a very social enterprise from the very start. I think the financial crisis was a rude awakening also for those working in the industry, like myself, that it was far from. It wasn't actually, the system wasn't actually delivering on the promise of stability, security, not taking too much risk or actually risk that could compromise the whole system, which all happened in that crisis. And for me, I had the luck of being able involved in splitting up a large bank at that time, which was about to split up amongst three shareholders. And I could really see how internally this organization was organized. And I could also see where strategic drift occurred because there were so many different entities that did not work according to the same clock. I also spoke to a lot of managers at that time because I was making an inventory of buildings, IT, people costs, and things like that to be able to split it up. What I noticed is that all of them yearned for some sort of deeper meaning of their work, and they were saying like, yeah, I'm doing this work, but actually does it contribute to society? So I think I'm someone who spots this discomfort and then acts on it. And I've acted on it to shape my career. And I thought like, if I stay in banking, it has to be sustainable banking, which on the wind, I've ridden a lot of the wind of sustainable banking growing and being a profitable business to grow. Impact banking or impact investing has been the fastest growing investment segment in percentage, at least in the world. So I've ridden that wind, but it comes from this discomfort with the way the old system, the way I call it, used to work and has worked for centuries actually.
Okay. Now, how personal is sustainability or circular economy for you? Is it something, is that business or is that also something you see yourself doing in your private life, in your personal life?
Yeah, I do discuss a lot about it with my family. We are a close bunch, and so we read things and we share things, and then we compare notes on, oh, did you know that actually
Yeah.
growing this food, that it's actually coming all the way from the other side of the planet in a plane, and wow, that's you learn something new every day, right? So it's a very active global economy that we're in, and to position yourself as an individual in that with sustainable behavior requires constant learning and constantly adapting your food pattern, I guess, your consumption pattern. Um, it's something that we keep on discussing, and yeah, I think it's very aligned with my corporate beliefs. And one of the things I think that is if you think of it, one of the success factors of my career is that I've always tried to be authentic. I am myself. I do believe that sustainability is the future, that we have a common future, all of us,
Yeah.
all people on this planet, all should do well, and there can't be a mechanism that doesn't participate, or there should be. And I think I've chosen the way my career developed to do that in the way that I was closest to, and the one I was close to was the financial system. And I think many will agree with me that it's changing too slowly, and it requires some more energy to change.
Okay. Hey, you
Yeah.
mentioned something interesting, being authentic. Is being authentic, is that difficult or hard to do?
The harder you try, the less it works. Um, so yeah, no, it's not difficult. But yeah, you could fail by trying very hard.
Yeah. But this also, I mean, for I would say the younger generation, the people out there who just starting their career, some might want to look at role models. Hey, how can I emulate? How can I copy that role model I have? And how does that align with being authentic? So, or maybe also a question to you. So, is that mismatch? And did you have role models yourself?
Ah, yeah. I don't know if I'm a role model for anyone. I hope in my family somehow we inspire each other. Friends might be inspired. Um, but did I have role models myself? No, actually, not that many. I mean, I think I've always been inspired by, for example, very early in my life, I was very intrigued by a woman called Anita Roddick. She's the founder of Body Shop.
Yeah.
And what intrigued me is that she started selling cosmetics on a different kind of scheme than the luxury brands did. And still, she managed to make it a global business in the end. I mean, I don't know how much of that belief is still intact. But at that point in time, I was fairly young, and I saw that there was like this shop that required you to bring your own bottles, and they would fill them in the shop. I thought that was revolutionary at the time, and I was very sensitive to it because my parents had a business, and we saw the shift from locally made stuff to products made in China and containerization. So the shop had been around for 50 years when it closed, but it really went through this cycle of things being made locally and repairable to, in the very end, things coming from very far away and not being repairable, having to be chucked as waste. If people
Oh,
will bring them back and say there's something broken, if it came from very far away,
yeah.
and this
Hey,
has nothing to do with China, by the way, but it's just containerization. So wherever it came from the world, we couldn't send it back.
yeah. No, I
I thought,
understand
yeah.
that it is not specific China, but it's an example of the linear economy you mentioned. Um, uh, so how significant was seeing the shop of your parents close because it shifts from repairing things to throwaway products? That's what I'm hearing.
No, no, I don't think it was kind of a third generation thing. I was choosing another career path, and I was at university far away. As you said, I've chosen to study in a couple of countries, so I've been really kind of sharpening my academic blade
Yeah. Okay.
um, by going to Denmark and then to the US and then other adventures. But it so it wasn't for me to run a local business, and I was sold to other entrepreneurs who did their thing with it. Um, but and I don't think it really was stoppable. I think containerization as a way of shipping goods onto the continent and then selling them um, into people is something that we could have kept on doing, but the model was probably unsustainable itself because you had the whole digital wave. So it was more kind of um, the backlog of not being digital that I think made those businesses unsustainable at that time, which
Yeah.
is kind of at the end of the last century. So that's a while back. It's actually quite rusty in my memory.
Okay. Hey, Jan, as mentioned, you worked 20 years for a Dutch bank, and before you became the bank's climate and circular economy expert,
Hmm.
you were change manager, compliance manager, information manager.
Yeah,
Somehow I sense that having that background in change, compliance, and information
yeah.
is relevant for being able to do what you're doing for climate. Uh, is that a fair assumption? And of that, I would say background, what's the most relevant, most significant to? So from one, you could say job to the other. What did you take with you?
I'm glad that you asked. Actually, it's a question I've never been asked, but I'll be honest. I think it's essential. It's the data layer that I learned to appreciate as the backbone of a business like a bank, which is highly virtualized. Money is highly virtualized, but I can read a data model. I can take a model, and I think that's a skill that really helped me understand complex things. So I'm still thinking in data models in a way. If you again, the fishing boat example of only caring about fuel prices and the price of the fish. You could build that in a data model easily and then extend it with some extra factors like the environmental factors of the
Yeah.
health of the ocean and the CO2 emissions. That's kind of adding to the richness of your data, right? So it does help me that part. So the information management part is very much with me because it's also the start of my career. As you said, I started in IT with some very large international companies. So that was with me kind of, and maybe also the reason I was hired into banking because I could see that the digital backbone for banking is key.
Okay.
But then compliance. I mean, if anything, sustainability and sustainable finance is pushed by compliance. There's an increasing amount of financial regulators right now that ask for sustainable finance elements across the world. It's very diverse, but to be implemented. So it's actually regulation or compliance pushing this world. It's a very compliance-driven topic. So being sensitized to that, I was involved, by the way, in a team responsible, globally responsible for a investor act to protect American investors, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and it had a very detailed setup where you had to give reckoning to investors that you were in control. So I've learned with the compliance to deal with in control statements. I think in sustainable finance, you need to be able to show that you're in control. That's what a good sustainable finance setup requires. And then the change management part, that's actually working with people. I love people. I'm an extrovert. I actually love interacting with people. But that doesn't get you there. I think it requires a bit more skills and tactics. I mean, the change management part really got me into how do you work with people to strive for a common goal. I became a better project manager during that time. Ran with a colleague a project which solved an immense backlog of maintenance issues and again in the digital sphere, but like very much in the core of the bank. And I think that's very inspiring when you introduce new procedures. You tell people by teaching them how to work differently. Well, tomorrow we're gonna work like that. And I always used to disguise the change into a course, which is kind of one of my secret recipes. I'm telling everybody now. But if you can make people learn, they become more playful and kind of by playing out the future, they kind of start adapting to the new way of working. And then when you turn the dial or turn the switch, well, the same you could do with sustainable finance, right? I mean, if you practice the skills to execute it, to do the risk management on environment and social, and you automate that to a certain extent, then you can turn the switch and probably a larger percentage of your business in finance will be sustainable finance. So I think all three, like the information management part, the compliance management part, and the change management part are with me until this very day. They're very intrinsically in me because I've done it for many years.
Yeah. Okay. When you get to in discussion about climate change, well, first of all, it is no. Is it a difficult topic to discuss? Because there's still people out there who are climate change deniers. By the way, are they a part of your target audience? Do you have to convince people there's climate change and we have to do something about that? Is that the what's the majority of the discussion at the moment?
Yeah, it's a multi-layered question. I'll take it from the top.
Yeah.
Is climate change real? Yes, it is real. It's scientifically proven for the scientific basis has been developed in the 19th century, and then throughout the 20th, researchers have kept on working on it, and now we're in the 21st century, and there's more certainty about all these models, and yes, climate change is real. But then, how do you convince people that actually choose to deny it? I don't try, because it's very hard to change people's minds with facts, I've heard. I think you have to live it. You could, also get people to change who maybe don't believe in it, but like give a better future. Yeah. So, but I think if there's absence of belief in the common good, then that's more dramatic. So I think a little bit of a doubt on climate change and the effects it will have on everybody's life is probably good. I think a deep skepticism based on a lack of a belief in the common good, that is really dysfunctional. So it really depends on the degree of how um, it it hampers the progress of the work that I need to be doing, that I would say something about it. On the
Yeah,
other hand, I mean, working in sustainable finance gets you in the neck of the woods where you're mostly dealing with converted people and people that say, look, we need to act now, or we need to act faster. And also, I want to learn how to do it. I think that's the best attitude.
yeah. Okay. If you want to learn how to do it, what works best? A top-down, holistic view approach, or more bottom-up, local?
Yeah, I'm not going to choose. It's too black and white.
Yeah.
I think the holistic approach has a very good in. We work with the theory of change, right? I've always worked with the theory of change, and there's a couple of steps in there. So it's awareness, and I think there the holistic part works well. I mean, if you get people to think about the planet and the well-being of the planet, there's lots of great movies and visualizations on that on YouTube, and they do something to you if you look at it. I mean, if you're sensitive to it. That could be kind of the first awareness. We need to do something about pollution. We all agree. Mm? But then that belief is not enough. You need to learn how to apply it in your professional life. If you're well positioned to do something about it, I mean, many people might not be. So it might be that you're only positioned as a consumer, but if you're involved in a company producing things, you might choose to develop the skills that actually help you to act against pollution. That is kind of the second layer of the theory of change. Then you've entered into, how do I do this? I mean, can I learn something, how to measure? And again, I'm sticking to finance. Can I measure for a financial portfolio where plastic pollution is in our portfolio amongst our clients, which are the ones actually as part of their business model, uh, putting out plastics into the world, and which of them lead to plastic pollution. So asking that question and trying to understand it, building up the skills, that's kind of a second step.
Okay.
That's maybe you as an individual. And then you would probably need a team, so an organization around you to change it well. So that's the third layer, and then I'll be quick. But I mean, if enough organizations do that, you might have system change.
Well, I was just thinking of earlier this year, I had the honor to, for my work, to visit Rwanda. And I
Oh,
was
wow.
quite amazed to see that Rwanda prohibits you to bring plastic bags into the country. They actually
Mhm.
scan that your luggage when you get to the airport. They just have a law which says, "Hey, no plastic bags." So there's no plastic bag pollution in the country.
Yeah.
Uh, is that I mean, it's an example which is working there. Is that something you would advocate to also look at those examples of how we can improve the environment?
I'm not sure. I don't know the details of how Rwanda deals with it. I do know that Rwanda is very ambitious and actually a country that's really leading on environmentalism on the African continent. So compliment to them. But it's I think if I put myself, and this is something I apply a lot, like if I put myself in the shoes of the customs
Yeah.
person, I don't know if it's customs doing this, but um, there's quite a lot on their plate, right? I mean, they need to inspect a whole checklist of things that should not enter the country. Um, So I'm not sure if it's the magic wand that will get every country across. I do think that plastic has a useful use to a certain extent, but it's very ephemeral. I mean, once it escapes your grasp, it could go into the environment and it could go into nature and it could go spoil far more than you eventually paid for the plastic bag, or the
Okay.
utility
Yeah.
of
Okay.
the bag might be superseded by the damage it does in nature. And I think that's what Rwanda is trying to avoid. That
Just a personal example
yeah,
I came
yeah.
across, which I said, "Hey, I really remember it triggered me because I really remember that." But just wondering what, if briefly discuss, what are the, let's say, what's the advice? What are the successes you're trying to achieve from a unit perspective when it comes to well, reduce plastic?
Yeah. So I'm mostly concerned with the financial bit, which does take into account everything, all the other work that's been done on design criteria, reusability, etc. There's an ongoing negotiation, so I can't say much about the outcome because honestly, it's up to the negotiators. But I think all these things are on the table. You can read about it on the INC website. It's actually the website that tracks the negotiation and that publishes on what the negotiators are discussing. But I think a lot of it is outside of the financial realm. I know that they're discussing design criteria. And then my question is, if design criteria get agreed, or some chemicals can no longer be in plastics, what does that mean for the financial world actually raising the capital, or servicing financially those companies that need to change? What's the impact of the investments? What's the impact on the risk? What's the impact on the uncertainties? And risk management is really reducing uncertainty. So it very much the change in the reality. For example, a ban on a certain plastic has an immediate impact on the portfolios of companies, because if they are serious about risk management, they might want to know, what does a ban on substance X, or this type of plastics, what's the effect on the business that I'm financing? And that's purely defensive. So there's a motive, or a selfish motive there, to be interested in that from a risk management angle. More proactively, you could start being part of the solution and kind of pledging money or putting money into the many solutions that are there to end plastic pollution.
Okay. Hey, Jan, almost out of time, but a couple of questions I still very much would like to ask you. First of all, can you identify two or three milestones in your life, key milestones? Hey, that was a milestone for me that made an impact.
Yeah, well, kind of. I think one is, we've already mentioned that. I didn't realize that. I haven't talked about it for a long time, but selling the business of my parents, I was involved in that. I was
Okay.
a business school student at that time when it was sold, and I was involved in it. So that made an impression on me because I was super young. I was seeing how a business model could reach the end of its life cycle. 3 generations, 50 years of business, and then kind of deciding this is the right thing to do. We move on, and I was prepared to develop my career in a different field. By the way, my parents ran two businesses. One of them was a toys sales, and the other one was sports goods sales. So you can imagine that was quite an enjoyable era of my life to grow up in. So I think that made an impact. I think second, I mean, just being able to study abroad, and the many experiences. I mean, I'm grateful that you made the introduction, so I don't have to say that, but you said it yourself. I studied at KU Leuven, at CBS in Copenhagen, and then after University of California, Irvine. I made friends. Later in my career, I went to Harvard for a course, and that was also very, very rewarding because you make friends with different views, and it's very refreshing. So I think that is something that I take with me. That's absolutely a milestone. All those interactions with people from different continents that actually got raised in a completely different setting, and that by virtue of that setting and their environment, think differently about things. So I think that's very refreshing and keeps me on my feet, and also kind of keeps me thinking about that there's no universal truth, right? And then the third one is, well, I think when you have a lot of experience under your belt, the belief that you can still change, that's very much with me. So I'm trying to change myself on a daily basis. So changing job from a very secure banking position to a multilateral environment, highly political and but extremely exciting. Because my work is kind of the context is an ongoing negotiation, and we have to derive the lessons for the financial industry there. So I think the third milestone is really being where I'm at right now, and really seeing or trying to draw a strategic line to the future, because there's many years ahead of me. So
Hey,
it's a bit my past, and
yeah, I
uh,
got that.
my study and what's happening now. Yeah.
Hey, final question. What would your advice be to those young people listening to this interview? Um, how would you advise them when they start their journey?
Yeah, my journey started 35 years ago, I guess, to get to the point where I'm at. So imagine myself 35 years ago. I wished I had known what I know now, but I think that's a very common answer. People, that's, let's say, like the biggest cliche on the world. But you can't. You can't project knowledge into. I think, yeah, go out and go out into the world, discover different continents. Don't forget to study abroad if you study, or if you work abroad, because it's very refreshing. It kind of resets you from all your assumptions that you grew up with, and it's a lasting thing that will keep you agile on your feet. So I think, yeah, um, also a little bit go with the flow, but not too much. Try to kind of steer your destiny um, mildly, gently, and authentically, I would say.
And thank you for sharing your story with the brand called you.
Yeah, thank you, Fritz. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.